just for a quick moment, I'd really love to go back and show some appreciation for the season that Lamar Jackson and the rest of this Baltimore Ravens offense had in 2024. The Baltimore Ravens attempted less passes than anyone else in the league other than the Philadelphia Eagles. Yet they still finished with the seventh most passing yards in the league, leading them to have a better net yards per attempt than anyone else in the league. And in that same vein, Lamar Jackson, who threw the ball less than 15 other quarterbacks in 2024, was sixth in yards, second in touchdowns, and threw less interceptions than any other starting quarterback not named Justin Herbert. All of this on top of having over 900 yards on the ground on 139 carries. Derrick Henry had probably the best year of any 30-year-old running back in the NFL history. In fact, if you look at NFL history, Derrick Henry is first in yards among guys at 30 years old or older. He's one of 5 30-year-olds to have 15 or more rushing touchdowns in a season, and he did all of this while averaging almost 6 yards per attempt. We should also show some love to Zay Flowers as well, because he became the first wide receiver in the history of the Baltimore Ravens to be elected to the Pro Bowl. And of course, all of these statistics, including ones that I haven't mentioned yet, would not be possible without the offensive line. Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum both were Pro Bowlers, and no offensive line as a unit in the league blocked better for the running game than Baltimore, as they were first in yards before contact at 3.3 yards per carry before contact. And the Ravens allowed 24 sacks last year, a number that gave them the third best mark in the entire league. The defense had incredible playmakers as well. Marlon Humphrey, Roquan Smith, and Kyle Hamilton all made all-pro teams. Kyle Van Noy turned in an absolutely stellar season, getting his first 10-plus sack year and his 11th year as a pro. Really, the only thing you want the Ravens to be better at is taking the ball away in 2025, as they landed at 20th in the league in that stat. But outside of that, the Ravens' defense was really one of the best last year. Moving into 2025, the Ravens did say goodbye to one of their offensive linemen this offseason, as Patrick McCarry signed a multi-year deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This leaves Andrew Voorhees as the top guy to fill in at that left guard spot. Outside of McCarry, though, there are not any real major changes to note from the offense in terms of players leaving. Offensive additions through free agency were limited, as DeAndre Hopkins is probably the only guy that will get to make much of an impact. However, depth was the name of the game this offseason, especially along the offensive line in the NFL draft, as Emory Jones, Carson Vincent, and Garrett Dellinger all were drafted this past April, and the only non-offensive lineman drafted to the offense this year was 6th-round wide receiver LeJontay Wester from Colorado, who was really the only guy to get much action in the passing game in the Ravens' first preseason game this year. Defensively, Baltimore did have a few notable losses. Michael Pierce ended up deciding to hang up the cleats and retire this offseason. Brandon Stevens signed a 3-year deal with the New York Jets. And another notable loss was Malik Harrison. However, the Ravens will still see him twice a year, as he will suit up as a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2025. The Ravens did bring in Jair Alexander on something of a prove-it deal to see if he can still add to this talented secondary. But the most notable addition to this team is first-round selection Malachi Starks from Georgia. He will provide something that the Ravens need, and that's someone to pair with Kyle Hamilton, as well as be somebody that is still very talented over the top of the defense if Baltimore decides that they need Kyle Hamilton up closer to the line of scrimmage. We've seen over the past couple of seasons where Kyle Hamilton has been elite towards the line of scrimmage, where we've seen seasons where he's been elite towards the boundary or over the top. And it's kind of just been whatever Baltimore needs on the defense that given season, where it kind of determines where he's going to play. And so Malachi Starks is a guy who maybe they just rely on both of these guys to do both jobs. But regardless, Baltimore is going to be able to rely heavily on both of these guys. And I think both of these guys are going to reward the Ravens with great play And they're, especially a guy as a first round pick, Malachi Starks, he's going to reward the Ravens for using that first round selection on him. Looking at the schedule and looking at what the aspirations should be for the Baltimore Ravens, this should be one of the teams in the AFC that really feels like they have a shot at winning the Super Bowl. They have probably the two guys, if you're trying to make an unstoppable offense, you have probably the two guys to do that. The most elusive player in the league in Lamar Jackson, the most untackleable player in the league in Derrick Henry, a really good receiver in Zay Flowers, an incredible offensive line, if not the best offensive line in the league. It does suck that Isaiah Likely went down with injury, and he's probably going to miss a few weeks during the season, and he might have some, it might linger into the games he plays. But defensively, I think this team got better. I think offensively, if they didn't get better, they definitely didn't get worse. I know replacing Patrick McCarry with Andrew Voorhees might be something that Ravens fans, they might not love to see, given that Voorhees didn't play a lot last year. But there's depth in that offensive line room. With the names I mentioned, like Emory Jones, Carson Vincent, and Garrett Dellinger, but there's also guys on this team that I didn't mention. And there's depth at virtually every position on this team. There's guys that can get after the passer. There's guys that can take the ball away. There's guys that can run the ball, pass the ball, catch the... the Ravens have everything. And honestly, if they end this season without a Super Bowl, that's going to be somewhat of a disappointment, in my opinion. Because this is the team that I would I would predict it now. If it was the goal of this video to predict the Super Bowl winner of 2025, it would be the Ravens.